So good afternoon. This is now the second to last webinar of this week. After this is the third week. After 2 weeks already of a lot of work. I hope it was bearable. I can understand for a lot of you this comes on top of your work agenda. So it's different than coming here to Turin and focus 5 days. Now your attention every day is a bit fragmented, and at certain moments of the day you have to focus on it. So let's hope for next time that we can be here back in Turin. And thank you so far for already being with us in the webinars and on the platform. Last week we finished the week with 2 sessions, one on Thursday and one on Friday, freedom of association and collective bargaining with Karen, and then the session on Convention 169 on indigenous peoples. And in both sessions, I think they went very good. Actually, we had a lot of questions and a lot of discussions on these 2 topics. So the third week and the final week, and in today's session, we really would like to lay down the groundwork for what we actually want to get out of this training. We don't want just to end this week by saying, oh, this was interesting, and we continue to our business as usual. The idea is that we would like to start thinking, okay, what is next? How can we take this forward? All the elements that we have discussed. And the idea of today's session is to see what are more of these tools, these instruments, and these possible initiatives that we can develop that can contribute to coherence, that can contribute to synergies. I think today we will hear some low-hanging fruits, even some quick wins. Other proposals that might be discussed today will be more strategic and more medium, middle, and long-term initiatives. But the idea of today is to listen to Gita and to Marielena on some of the initiatives or some of the tools that are available and that can be adopted by national contact points. And the second part of this session is to listen to some colleagues of yours that were with us already in 2019 and see how they acted upon once the training course was finished a long time ago in 2019. What were the kind of the initiatives that they took at country level, or how they brought forward the agenda on synergies and coherence. So I would now like to ask Gita to start sharing your screen, please, and that we can start with the first part of today. Gita?
You have to stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, voila.
Okay, so is my screen there?
Yes.
Yeah, so now it should be there, right? You can see it all? Yeah?
Yes, we can. It's full screen.
Okay, thanks a lot. So, well, thank you very much, Carl, for the introduction. And I indeed hope that you had already very fruitful sessions on the very specific topics that were presented as part of the training. And so what I will try to do in the 20 minutes or something that I will be speaking is really, in a way, summarizing some of the information that was already shared with you on the kind of tools and resources that the ILO has on labor standards in business operations, and that obviously can help you in your work. I would say both as part of the NCPs, the promotion of responsible business conduct among enterprises, as well as specific instances, the complaints mechanism of non-observance of the guidelines, of course, as part of the NCP follow-up mechanism to the OECD M&E guidelines. So again, this was a slide that I used, of course, for the ILO, the instrument to directly engage with business but not only business, also with government and social partners, is the M&E declaration. So I will be speaking about some of the operational tools under that instrument, but of course the ILO overall, as you've learned over the past weeks, of course, everything that the ILO basically does is, of course, in relation to labor standards, whether it's working with governments on putting in place national legislation, social dialogue mechanisms, labor inspection, labor administration, all of this, or whether it's also directly addressing then companies in the objective of moving alongside in achieving decent work in the countries around the world. So you will see a number of the slides that I already used in the session that I did now 2 weeks ago. I think, Carl, it's already 2 weeks ago. But so I will give just a little bit more information on how this really can be useful for you as in the context of your function, both in the promotion and specific instances. So this is again, the slide on the policy coherence. And as we discussed previously in the OECD M&E guidelines, there are actually 2 specific chapters that make a direct reference to the ILO standards. So it is in the chapter on employment and industrial relations that was there from the beginning, of course, when the OECD M&E guidelines were adopted 1 year before the ILO M&E declaration was adopted. And that in its explanation makes a direct reference to the M&E declaration for further guidance. And then the new chapter on human rights that was added in 2011, where although it is based on the guiding principles on business and human rights, those guiding principles in the pillar 2 on business respect for human rights reference by name the ILO Declaration on Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work. So basically in 2 chapters, you have a direct link to labor standards and to the 2 specific instruments of the ILO with expectations on what business should be doing, the M&E declaration and the Declaration on Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work. And as I explained, all of those principles, of course, in these declarations are directly derived from the ILO standards, conventions, and recommendations. Oops. So when we were talking about, of course, these declarations and standards, of course, are all really good, but where it really comes down is to the implementation. And this was a slide that I used in terms of the operational tools in relation to the M&E declaration, where there is made a clear distinction between, at the one hand, promotion, and that is very much, providing the support, of course, at the country level and support to enterprises. Then you have the company union dialogue, which is in a way a mediation mechanism. And then you have the interpretation procedure, which is really in front of the governing body to resolve a disagreement in the meaning of the M&E declaration and the application in a real situation. So the first one under these operational tools and is the ILO Help Desk for Business. And this is really, I should say, that was set up in 2009 by the governing body to really provide a one entry point for companies that want to align their policies and practices with international labor standards. But not only companies, but also governments and social partners, specifically when they want to put in place a legislation or a policy that is there to stimulate the respect and the uptake of international labor standards in business operations. So this is comprised of the free and confidential expert advice service. So this is where the ILO receives directly questions from company managers, workers, and governments, but also, we've received questions from academia, and also here we've received questions from OECD NCPs. And then there is a dedicated website. So just a few facts and figures on this help desk. So as I said, it was established in 2009, and we always do like a yearly report, and we are at the moment finalizing our yearly report ending February 2021, so it's not ready yet. So the numbers that I'm giving you is rather the numbers ending February 2020. And so there we've received 1,317 individual queries from companies. And maybe say, and these are receivable queries, because we receive a lot of other queries. But for example, if we already have some of this information on the website, then we just refer the website. So these are actually new questions that actually require an expert advice from the ILO. So this is average of, I would say, 130 questions a year that we receive like that from mainly multinational enterprises. And since the outbreak of the pandemic in early 2020, I mean, we have seen an enormous increase in individual queries as companies really are looking for guidance on how to deal with a number of specific issues that they were encountering in their activities, whether it was related to occupational safety and health, workers with family responsibilities and all teleworking, but also restructuring in relation also to their supply chains, where either they were reducing the orders and how to do that in a responsible way, especially in the context of countries where there was no system of social protection floors or social security. So how to basically do this in a responsible way. In looking at who is mainly using this, it is indeed, mainly multinational enterprises, managers from multinational enterprises. They are by far the largest group of users of the help desk, because of course this is the group of companies that, because they have operations worldwide where you have different legal systems that are basically confronted with these kind of challenges of the expectations that you have in the OECD guidelines or in the guiding principles, the M&E declaration, the global compact or sectoral initiatives. But then how do you put them in practice, specifically in countries where the legislation is actually not so conducive of upholding these kind of standards? Western Europe is the region where we receive most of the requests from, but we also see an increase in the number of users from other regions, and specifically South Asia and Latin America. And that, of course, also has to do with the fact that the help desk is also promoted now through other mechanisms, such as national action plans on business and human rights. It's used by in other contexts, and we've also been translating a number of the website in other languages. So you see there are more and more questions coming in from other regions. There is more or less an even spread in the regional focus of the questions, but many of the questions we receive are non-region specific. So it's a lot about companies basically putting in place their policies. In terms of sector also, actually, we receive questions from all kinds of economic sectors, so no clear dominant economic sector. And in terms of the breakdown of the questions we receive by the area of the M&E declaration, then we can see that occupational safety and health is actually the area where we receive most questions on, followed by child labor, forced labor, migrant workers, sometimes linked to forced labor, hours of work, wages, non-discrimination, termination of employment, and then compliance with national law, compliance with international labor standards. So these really are the main questions that we receive in the help desk. And of course, in a way, the fact that we receive those questions help us also in developing specific tools in those areas. And The tools you find on the website of the help desk. So it actually, the help desk is in English, French, and Spanish, and we have mirror sites now in Japanese and in Chinese, and in a few other languages are in the making. So on that website, you have, for all of the topics, as I just mentioned, from the M&E declaration, we have questions and answers. So these are real questions that we've received from companies, and of course the expert advice that went out from the ILO. And we've reformulated those Q&As to put them on the website, because we feel that they are, of course, relevant not only to one company, but actually to many companies. And in the Asia Pacific region, they've now they've actually developed a specific booklet with these Q&As from the website to also use in trainings that we are conducting in these countries. And because of the enormous amount of questions we received in relation to the impact, dealing with the impact of COVID, we also created a specific section now now in 2020, with specific elements and policy briefs in relation to responding to COVID-19. In addition to the Q&As, we have the tools for business, again, per topic. Training opportunities and webinar recordings. We have actually quite a number of them, and the webinar recordings is not only what we do as ILO, but also ILO together with the Global Compact, for example, or in the context of specific development cooperation projects. So these are all available for companies or users of the help desk website to just listen to them and to learn more. It also highlights the ILO business networks, and I will see a bit more later, and the company union dialogue facilitation. So the promotion of the help desk, we do this, of course, within the ILO. It's featured not only on the website, the specific website of the M&E declaration, but also on the ILO homepage. You can find immediately the link to the help desk. And then in the website of the International Labour Standards Department, because of course they are mainly dealing with governments, so they've also put the help desk, as it is mainly the entry point for companies. And then we find it on many other websites and of development cooperation projects. You know, these are a number of the projects where you can also find the link to the help desk. And then it is increasingly being promoted outside of the ILO, as I said, in the context of national action plans on business and human rights, specifically as a support for companies when they are doing undertaking due diligence, and they end up identifying an issue in relation to a labor issue, and then how to deal with it as part of due diligence processes. But also it's specifically promoted also through the Global Compact because of the labor principles, the action platform on decent working global supply chains of the Global Compact. And I think also a number of OECD NCPs have also included it on their website as, you know, additional resources for companies. Then in terms of the capacity building, I think we already last time also highlighted a number of standard courses that we offer together with the training center in Turin. And there is this one really particular one that I think is really relevant also in this context, which is the one that we do on the labor dimension of human rights due diligence, which is a course that we target primarily to enterprises. But of course, in that context, we also have government representatives and other participants, but it is really focusing on the labor dimension of human rights due diligence. We do trainings at the country level and also for very specific audiences. Then on the ILO business networks, and if I'm not mistaken, and maybe Marjolaine will say a bit more about it, but the OECD has also now some engagement directly also with the enterprises as part of the due diligence guides. The ILO has topical, so they are not sectoral based business networks, but they are topic based. So you have the child labor platform, which is ILO together with the Global Compact. We have the Global Business Network for Social Protection Flaws, Global Business Network on Forced Labor and Human Trafficking, and the Global Business and Disability Network. So these are networks of companies where they regularly come together. As I said, it is cross-sectoral. They are there to, in some cases, really to learn more about, how to deal with these issues in the practice in different countries around the world. They share experiences, and sometimes it's companies operating in different sectors, but in the same countries. And so also seeing how they could better partner in ILO projects that we have ongoing in these countries, so that actually the voice of the private sector is also heard more strongly by governments, and so that you can have a much better public-private collaboration in addressing, I would say, systemic issues, definitely when we talk about child labor and forced labor, and where, of course, dealing with social protection flaws is something that in the end will also be better for the companies, because if they then, have to go through a restructuring, at least they know that if there is a good social protection flaw in their country of where they are sourcing from, for example, that the impact of that restructuring will be less painful, to say, because at least for the workers, there is a certain level of social protection, and they will not end up without any income. So these are really the kind of business networks that we have, and the kind of approach that they take. Then I highlighted also last time, the many development cooperation projects that we have around the world, and these are the ones just using the M&E declaration as the policy framework, and the ones that, from ILO, we are working in many of them together with the OECD, specifically in Asia and Latin America, and then also with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. So using the 3 international instruments as the entry point. But in addition, we have a lot of projects in Africa. We have additional projects in Asia. So they really are, I would say, part of the work we do at the country level. And again, they are part of the bigger portfolio of ILO development cooperation. And I think it is important in the context of, specifically if you are dealing with specific instances, that you look, for example, at the countries where there are these development cooperation projects, because normally these projects are really linked to decent work priorities that have been identified in the country, and where the ILO is there to support the country in making progress on that specific topic. And if this is a priority area for the government, it is very much, it's really possible that, of course, a company that has operations in that country has those challenges, and thus also the challenges upholding the expectations in the OECD M&E guidelines or the guiding principles or any of the others. So this is also a good, I would say, a source of information for you. Then I already spoke also about the promotion at the national level through the tripartite appointed national focal points, which is a specific mechanism under the M&E declaration. And I think what is specifically,
Yeah, Gita, maybe before you continue with the tripartite focal points, there were some questions, 2 questions that might be maybe a good moment to address them before you continue.
Yeah.
Maybe Irene, you can ask the question. Here we are. Yeah, Irene. If your microphone works at least. Huh? I cannot hear you. If not, I can also read the question here. Huh? So Irene, you mentioned business networks with enterprises. Irene would be interested, how many enterprises take part in these business networks? Who are they, and how are the represented enterprises selected? Is there also a list accessible of these enterprises?
Yes, thanks a lot, Irene, for this question. So I would say, how many companies participate, it depends a little bit on the topic. The largest one is the one on disability, because it's one of the very first networks that the ILO set up. And there, as I said, it's companies from different sectors. Most of them are multinational enterprises as well, because it's again dealing with some of the challenges or practices operating in various legal systems. They are not, they are not selected. Any company that actually would like to become a member of a business network of the ILO can just contact the department that is managing the network, and they are not represented. Representative. There is no need for them to be representative, because we are talking about practices. This is not about policy making in the ILO. The business networks is really, I would say, at the one hand, helping companies that are facing a number of challenges in the practical application of maybe their own corporate policies. And secondly, facilitating the exchange of experiences among companies. But they are not there for policy making. So if within the ILO, we are negotiating, for example, governments, employers and workers are negotiating a specific standard, the business networks do not have any role to play in that. So it's not that they are part of the bigger policy making within the ILO. It's a very practical approach that these networks take. And is there a list of these enterprises? You can actually go, on each of the, and you will see a number have produced good practice guides. So you see which companies are participating. And yeah, as I said, it's really about practical application in company operations.
Thanks, Gita. We had also a question. Francesca, you would like to ask the question? You're muted also.
No, she's not muted. She's actually, her microphone is open.
Okay, I don't hear anything. Do you hear, Patricia?
No, I can't actually.
Oh, okay.
So I think I see the question. So yeah. Francesca, are you there?
But I think the microphone is not working. So, but go ahead, Gita, on the question that then is. Please go ahead on the question that is posted in the chat.
Yes. So about international framework agreements. So we actually did a survey of all of the international framework agreements, and we indeed identified that a number of them already reference the M&E declaration. I don't know, it says a small number make reference to M&Es. I don't know whether a global framework agreement is, of course, between a multinational enterprise and a global union. So maybe this is more something, in the area of what trade unions can do in their engagement with multinational enterprises, or, what global union federations are doing in relation to global framework agreements with multinational enterprises. When we come to the company union dialogue, there indeed we see that this mechanism was actually used in one of the global framework agreements, because they referenced the M&E declaration and they had a global framework agreement. So the company union dialogue was something that was seen as a kind of natural extension of that framework agreement. You know, the ILO as such, we don't have a specific position on international framework agreements. I mean, we study them, but we really consider this as part of industrial relations between a multinational enterprise and a global union federation. And we study them and we see what is actually included in those framework agreements. Sometimes it's true that we receive requests of, you know, we don't know if we receive a request from a company on something, you know, that they ask us. It might be in the context of a negotiation of a framework agreement, and the same if we receive a question from a union. But we are not as such involved in any kind of negotiation of a framework agreement, because that is really between the company and the union.
Okay.
So I think these are the two questions, right?
Yes.
Okay, so just because I'm aware of time, so on the promotion at the national level, promotion through tripartite appointed national focal points. So this is, as I said, one of the operational tools under the M&E declaration, so it's you know, a bit different, of course, from the OECD NCP, because in the case of the M&E declaration, there is no obligation, you know, for an ILO member state to set up such national focal points or appoint national focal points. But of course, it clearly says all are encouraged to appoint national focal points on a tripartite basis, to promote the use of the M&E declaration whenever appropriate in the national context. It also says where similar tools or processes already exist, governments are encouraged to facilitate involvement of the social partners in them, and then a number of promotional activities for the national focal points. And so it's very much into the promotional activities that these focal points are actually appointed. So it's about awareness raising, capacity building, information materials in local languages. And I must say, I was very pleased last week. We had a conversation with Norway, and I learned, and I didn't even know, I learned that the M&E declaration also exists in Norwegian. And that was definitely a result of the engagement of the Norwegian ministry together with the OECD NCP. So I think that was very good news. So we've added it also on the ILO website now on the M&E declaration. Then, you know, promotion of the ILO Help Desk for Business and the Company Union Dialogue, set up tripartite plus dialogue platforms, and dialogue between home and host countries of multinational enterprises. And as ILO, we offer support to member states to establish national focal points. And when we say, you know, provide support, it is also helping member states to go through the process of thinking where a national focal points for the promotion of the M&E declaration would make most sense. So in terms of where would it be housed, you know, whether it's in the ministry, whether it's in a social dialogue institution, whether it's a combination of various models. And so that is what the ILO does. And we also offer support to develop promotional activities and these dialogue platform activities. So far, so far, so as I said, we have 7 ILO member states that have appointed such national focal points. And in each of the countries, the setup is a little different. And, you know, it also means actually for you as an OECD NCP, if you're interested in, you know, for example, the operations of companies in another country, I mean, of course, there's also the ILO office, you know, that you could contact. But in addition, there are also these national focal points. And under the French-funded project that we have on business and decent work, we, at the end of last year, we actually invited the French government to do a presentation for a group of trade unions that we had from Francophone Africa, and that was actually set up through the focal points in Côte d'Ivoire. So there we had an exchange with the French government and the focal points in Côte d'Ivoire, as well as trade unions in other Francophone countries. And the government of France actually gave the task to the French OECD NCP. So there it was your colleague Maëlys, who actually was speaking about the French due diligence law, of course, having implications for French companies operating outside of France. And so, including in Côte d'Ivoire, of course, where there is a lot of French investment, and how to basically have a good dialogue between the French NCP, the focal points on the M&E declaration in Côte d'Ivoire, and to see what could be done more in terms of support for companies and get them involved in specific decent work challenges in these countries. Then, and this is my final slide, of course, as I said, everything that everything that we do in relation to international labor standards and national legislation, you can find back on NormLex, which is the whole information system on international labor standards, and the country profiles, where you can see which countries have ratified which standards. So if a country has not ratified definitely one of the core conventions, or a number of the other conventions, then obviously it might be that for a company there are additional challenges because there is no legal framework on this. And I think that is also very important just to look at, as well as to the comments of the committee of experts. I'm sure this was explained by my colleague Emily Sims and potentially also by Karen Curtis when it was in relation to freedom of association, which is of course a remaining challenge in many countries around the world. So even if companies try to do the right thing, if the legal environment is not conducive to that, then there are, of course, a number of specific challenges for the company to uphold these principles. And then, yes, I forgot about just the company union dialogue. So this is a specific procedure that is managed by ILO headquarters. So this is not done at the country level. I mean, not done by an ILO office or, in the field, nor by any of the national focal points for the promotion of the M&E declaration. It is done by ILO headquarters. So it's actually my unit who is responsible for this. And so it's the ILO facilitating dialogue. So in order to be able to do this, we need a joint request from a company and a union for ILO dialogue facilitation. And it's strictly confidential. And we provide neutral ground, technical inputs, and facilitate dialogue. And we also have a list of qualified facilitators, which are all ILO staff members, so really working on the topic on a day-to-day basis. So this is what we do. So to date, so since March 2017, we've received 6 such joint requests coming from a multinational enterprise and a global union concerning operations of a subsidiary of a multinational, so a direct subsidiary, or in the context of a business relationship, and sometimes a combination of those, all of them were in relation to freedom of association and industrial relations. And actually currently we are doing one, which is in relation to Convention 135, which is about access to the factory or a plant by trade unions in countries where, you know, you have, again, different legal frameworks about who can actually have access to a factory. All of these processes, as I said, have been facilitated by an ILO expert. Both parties agree to the ILO expert facilitating this. And we do dialogues at the global level, so with the multinational and with the global union, and then dialogue facilitation with the company and the national trade union in the country where basically there is you know, either the dispute or ongoing conflict. And so we provide the technical input and dialogue facilitation. 3 of these procedures concluded with the adoption of a plan of action, and 1 actually remained unresolved. And maybe it's interesting to hear also from you, but the one that remained unresolved was basically because the company hired a law firm, and the law firm was really very much on the legal, instead of taking the approach of how industrial relations, you know, is really about building trust between management and the workers, and how, you know, this is you know, you need to build trust, and you need to find compromises in order to move forward. And so that was really a challenge. 1 procedure was specifically related to the global framework agreement and its joint monitoring system. So this is going a little bit back to the question that came from Francesca. And as I said, 1 procedure is still ongoing. So this is, in a nutshell, I think, a number of elements that you could think about on what could be relevant in the context of the work, of course, that you are doing as an OECD NCP. And here are just, again, some of the email addresses that you could always contact us as well.
Thank you, Gita. And I propose we continue. There's one. Oh yeah, there's 1 question I see. If you can you answer that in 1 minute, Gita?
Yes, 1 minute. So as I said, it really depends on the setup in the country. And so yes, Senegal is quite interesting because they actually had their social dialogue institution, which is already a tripartite body. And so they said, well, we want to set up a specific committee in the social dialogue institution, which is a tripartite institution. Because this social dialogue institution is often asked by the government to provide advice, for example, on investment agreements, on investment facilitation. And so they felt that was a really good entry point. But in addition, the Ministry of Labor, together with the employers and the workers, they also wanted to have their own focal points on the promotion of the M&E declaration. So this is just, you know, in that context. And indeed, some other countries, you know, they have just 1, you know, the case of Portugal, it's in the Ministry of Labor. And although I think we have the Portuguese, the NCP from Portugal, I don't know whether the person is participating today as well. There it's in the Ministry of Labor, and they've been doing a lot of work with the community of Portuguese-speaking countries on promoting the M&E declaration also outside of Portugal. So you see there are different mechanisms. As I said, it depends on what the country finds is the right, I would say the right context or the right setting linked, but you know, the Ministry of Labor, I would say, is in all of them, is involved in all of them, because that's, of course, the direct link to the ILO.
Thank you, Gita. And more information also available on the website of the Multi M&E Declaration, ilo.org/M&E Declaration. Thank you, Gita. And let's continue with Marjoleine. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Geeta. Thank you for the opportunity to say something about this, the possibilities of synergies. I think there are basically two things that I would like to say. First of all, I would like to underline again the importance of alignment in approach between our organizations, and then highlight some coordination in practice, some examples. And hopefully they give some inspiration for further reflection on synergies with the work of the NCPs and the ILO. And so I must say that a lot has already been done. And in some of this work, NCPs already play a considerable role. So as the work or coordination in the field starts with alignment of the standards, I would just very briefly like to underline again how much is actually already done in this area. And when it comes to the three instruments of the ILO, the M&E Declaration, the M&E Guidelines of the OECD, and the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, they are already aligned and complement each other. And I would like just to highlight that shortly. First of all, they have a common understanding of what RBC is. And if you first, among the three instruments, there is a common understanding that the impact of business activity goes beyond the impact of the company itself, and may also affect products, services, business relationships throughout the supply chain. And so the impact which activities can have on human rights, including labor rights, the environment, and society, may be, of course, positive or negative. But there is also this common understanding that in order to establish what the impact of this business is, business should undertake due diligence in order to identify, prevent, or mitigate their actual and potential negative impact, and to account for how this negative impact is addressed. So this is not only about doing no harm, but it's also about understanding and addressing what the negative impacts are, and this may in fact also lead to transformation of activities. So then there is also a common understanding between the three organizations that for those affected by the negative impacts of business, firstly, states have the duty to protect, and when this is not possible, they have to ensure that the victims have access to effective remedy. And this is, of course, where the NCPs play a role. And then finally, I would like to underline that there is a common understanding among the three instruments that there is not only an important role for the government to protect and for business to respect human rights and other aspects of RBC, but that all stakeholders, including civil society and social partners, have a role to play in the implementation of these instruments and in making business operations advance towards a responsible business conduct. So this common understanding is actively promoted by the three organizations, and coherence is ensured because each instrument refers to the others and builds on each other's important added value. So some examples of this, for example, the due diligence approach was originally developed under the UN guiding principles and then incorporated in the OECD M&E guidelines and the ILO M&E declaration. And then the OECD developed its due diligence guidance based on this, which is now being promoted by the ILO and the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights. Another example is the work together in order to connect the implementation of RBC with the Sustainable Development Goals. Cooperation between the ILO and the OECD with respect to the Sustainable Development Goal number 8 on decent work and economic growth is an example of that. And part of that is also the Global Deal, which is a partnership with based on activities of many stakeholders, where also the ILO and the OECD are involved. So RBC standards touch upon most of the areas covered by the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is very important for business to know that when when acting responsibly or when conducting their business in a responsible way, they know that they are going not, at least not against the Sustainable Development Goals, and hopefully they support them. So another example, of course, of a good way of building on each other's works is this training. A great example of how coherence is enhanced between the OECD and the ILO. So the alignment of the three instruments and the common understanding that the organizations have on RBC is very important in order to give a clear message to business. And I think this is also important for the NCPs to know. But while there is a common position on the implementation of RBC, of course, the tools differ. And we have just heard the presentation by Gita on the different tools that the ILO offers, which could also be of a great use for the NCPs. And on the side of the OECD, we have the due diligence guidance. We have, of course, the NCPs itself, which do the promotion of the M&E guidelines and offer access to remedy, but which can also be a mechanism for enhancing social dialogue. And other tools or instruments that we have are the Global Forum, where we invite all the stakeholders and also non-adhering countries to the M&E guidelines to discuss important developments in responsible business conduct. And finally, we have the tool of, which is actually the tool of the OECD in general, which is peer learning based on comparative research, policy advice, and trainings. So, and of course, then there is the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights, who has as its main tool the national action plans that help also to governments to become more coherent on responsible business. And of course, they have the annual UN Forum on Business and Human Rights. So if we look at coherence or coordination on the ground, we see also some projects where these tools come together or where new tools for coordination have been developed. The starting point is that organizations have joined forces to provide technical advice and to promote implementation at the country level. So an important partnership, and Gita also already mentioned it, is one with the support of the European Union, which is the partnership instrument and consists in promoting responsible business within the context of projects in Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. So there is a project on Asia, which has as objective to promote responsible business in supply chains and to enhance respect for human rights, labor, and environmental standards by business. And this is and there is this project in Latin America which promotes RBC by supporting the development and implementation of the national action plans of the UN by strengthening due diligence and sharing good practice. So you see that all the elements of the three organizations come together in these programs. So focusing on the one in Asia, this is a very important program, not only because the Asian economy plays a crucial role in many global supply chains. 43% of global value chains in intermediate exports worldwide comes from Asia. But also because there are still some countries which do not adhere to the guidelines and have still some problems in their supply chains. And for example, the garment and footwear industry, where they have a lot of ILO related issues. This Asia project is done in partnership with Japan, and this is one of the countries among the 6 countries in Asia where the program is focused on, which is a partner of the OECD because it's an adhering country. It's a member of the OECD, and so it has also an NCP, and so there the NCP plays an important role. And the other 5 partner economies which are not adhering members are China, which is, however, an OECD key partner, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, and Myanmar. And this program aims to address decent work and environmental challenges through promoting responsible business practices in operations of enterprises in the area. And so it focuses on sustainable and inclusive growth by ensuring that investors and business have a better understanding of corporate social responsibility, and to create policy environments that promote responsible business. So how is this achieved? Well, first of all, it's done by creating policy dialogue between private sectors and government institutions on strategies to establish an enabling environment for the implementation and promotion of responsible business. And an important part is the train the trainer sessions, which actually consists of training leading representatives from employer organizations, academia, and workers' organizations. And once they have a good knowledge of due diligence and of the main aspects of RBC, they can share it with their constituents. So another way is to promote the RBC through this program is by forums for dialogue between suppliers and buyers. Very important that there is a greater understanding between those 2 parties. And of course, by doing joint research to show or to map for policymakers which labor or environmental practices need more attention and where their change will have the greatest impact. Japan actually has been very active, and there have been some recent outcomes where the NCP from Japan has been very successful, and there has been, I don't know, maybe you have attended this, there was in January an awareness raising high-level event about the role of responsible business in building resilience, which focused on the role of responsible business in the recovery as part of the recovery measures after COVID-19. And another outcome of this program for Japan in particular is the introductory guide on environmental due diligence with reference to RBC. I am aware of the time, so I think I will go a bit faster. Another country, so I mentioned one country in this project with an NCP, which had a lot of activities which were organized in the framework of this program. But other countries which did not have NCPs had also very successful events. For example, in Thailand, there was a program which focused on governance and transparency, business climate, and competitiveness. And this was more focused on how to help Thailand in developing its national action plan, including aspects of RBC. If I go then quickly to the Latin America program, Latin American and the Caribbean, this is a regional project of the ILO, the OECD, and the EU in total nine countries, which is carried out in partnership with Chile and Mexico, because they're both OECD members, and with Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, and Peru, who are all adhering countries to the OECD guidelines and have set up a national contact point for RBC, and 2 partner economies, Ecuador and Panama. So the objective of this project was, well, actually the same as the Asia process, but in addition to that, it focuses also specifically on strengthening the NCPs, and on the other hand, give also a key role to NCPs in the implementation of the project, in order to give more continuity to the whole project once it has stopped. So the project draws as well on the policy framework for investment of the OECD to help strengthen coherence also around RBC and the guidance on due diligence in various sectors. And these sectors are the mineral sector, extractives, agriculture, garment and footwear, and financial sectors. So the 3 activities which may be of interest for you are basically the support to governments in the development and implementation of the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. And for those countries where the National Action Plans had already been adopted, the activities focus more on the implementation and review of the NAPs. While for the other countries, the project will facilitate the process of drafting and approving and mostly implementing the NAP. So for example, they do this by mapping existing policies and regulations that enable and support RBC and contribute to the design and implementation of the NAPs. Another way or another activity that is part of the program is the enhancement of the understanding and capacity of stakeholders to implement due diligence in order to identify the biggest risks in certain sectors. And they do this also in combination with the promotion of due diligence, of the due diligence guidance, and training on how to apply the due diligence guidance. Then the third interesting activity is that the program facilitates the sharing of experiences and lessons learned and develops joint initiatives that promote RBC practices. For example, it focuses on strengthening access to remedy related to business impacts by delivering tailor-made capacity building to NCPs. And they do this with the involvement of all relevant stakeholders. And regional meetings of the NCP network have been organized, and I think some of you have attended them. And finally, there is a survey on RBC for the LAC program, which obtains to gather firsthand information on RBC practices and challenges of business operating in or from the region. So these are the most important projects of cooperation between the ILO and the OECD at this moment. Other cooperation or programs or projects of cooperation that have taken place is as I already mentioned, in the Alliance 8.7 project, or actually under SDG 8, there are 2 projects. One is the Alliance 8.7 project, which is focused on ending child labor, forced labor, modern slavery by 2030. And the ILO and the OECD have written an important report on this, which has focused on trying to measure human rights abuses and violations on the one hand, and have given some advice on how to end child labor and other forms of human rights abuses on a large scale. So this is taking place under under SDG 8, and as is the already mentioned global deal, which focuses on social dialogue and improving industrial relations. So I think I'd better wrap up here. Just to conclude, I think a lot of work has already been done in order to enhance alignment and cooperation on the ground, starting from the three instruments of the UN, the ILO, and the OECD. And today, we can reflect on how NCPs can play a role in bringing this a step further. So I hope that this gives some inspiration for your own role. NCPs may reflect on this mechanism that they have to enhance social dialogue more in cases where specifically labor-related cases that are brought to them, and also think it's important to what Gita said, to make good use of the ILO tools that exist already. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria-Helena. Very informative. It was a very good exercise what you did, highlighting how the institutional cooperation that already exists and the coherence. And that's actually is very inspiring because it's already there. A lot of the groundwork is already there. Let me quickly also share my screen. Good. Normally you should see it now. And then indeed Gita's presentation on some of these tools that are also readily available. They are already in operation and they are already in motion. So the second part, we would like to start now with the second part because we can still have a short after webinar discussion if there are still some questions for Gita or for Maria-Helena, or we can always set up a call after this webinar if you have any follow-up questions. But I would like to welcome Linda, Candia, and Cyril. If you would be in the training room, I would say come up front, have a seat in front of the room. We actually met not so long ago. It feels like long ago. Cyril said, it feels like ages ago, but actually it's not that long ago. But we met earlier, remember, when we didn't have to wear any masks. When we could stand in front of each other without 1.5 meters or 2 meters. You remember the good old days, So Cyril, Linda, and Kanya, thank you for joining us. We reached out to the three of them, asking them if they would be interested in sharing some of the follow-up work that they did. They were with us in the first edition of this training, and they were very happy to do so. So we asked them a few questions to think about. So I would like to start with Linda, and then I'll hand over to Kanya and Cyril. How are things going in your NPC? And since we met in 2019, you remember that in 2019, one of the exercises was to develop some follow-up activities. And now we are curious to hear, we are eager to hear what came out of this. What was one of the follow-up activities that you did? And maybe you could give to your colleagues here that are with us in this webinar, like maybe any low-hanging fruits, easy and quick wins that worked out well for your national contact point. And Linda, maybe you can start and also introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Carl. It's nice to be here, and it's nice to see so many names attending, some of which are even familiar. So even though we cannot be there in person, this is at least some kind of a way to be together, which is a good thing. So my name is Linda Piirto. I'm from the Finnish Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment, and I'm responsible for the Finnish RBC policy. And I guess you could say that my work lies on 3 pillars. First, there are the international standards from the UN, OECD, and the ILO. And then there's the EU related work, specifically related to different EU legislative proposals, which I follow. And then thirdly, our national projects, from which I could mention probably now the two biggest things. So we just published the results of the Finnish corporate human rights benchmark, where we studied how how is the performance of Finnish companies when it comes to business and human rights. And that study will be available in English in March. And then there's the mandatory due diligence process, which is ongoing at the moment. So these three pillars are the components of my work, and I'm also the secretary of our NCP. So that's the reason I participated to the last course, and probably why I am here today speaking to you. So Carl asked us to think what we've achieved since the course in Turin. And I participated together with my colleague from the Foreign Ministry, Kent Vilska, who is from the External Economic Relations Department. And for us, the biggest takeaway from the course was really that it deepened our knowledge on the whole ILO system, the conventions, the mechanisms, etc. So it's much easier for us now to see how all of the three international standards, how they or systems, how they work together when we have this deepened knowledge. And Carl mentioned low hanging fruits, and one of them is definitely that we have this tripartite ILO committee, where all the trade unions and business organizations and the government is present. And well, it can be said that because we have also a CSR committee where many of the members are present today, we have kind of assumed for many years that because some of the same organizations are part of the ILO committee as well, so that they would have already the information that we have. But obviously that was a false assumption, and that's why, especially since we were in Turin, we have been visiting the ILO committee as well. For example, I've talked to them about the EU Council conclusions and then our mandatory due diligence processes. So it's kind of like they are there, why not go there and talk with them? So that's one of the low-hanging fruits that we've collected. Then a second thing that we've really focused on relates to the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, where all of you know that there is one SDG related to decent work. Well, for some reason, when it comes to the government's SDG work, decent work somehow keeps disappearing. And I'm the one who is always saying that we have to mention decent work and we have to tie it into these and these actions that we're doing. So that's one thing that's come out of the course. Then Kent said that this coming to Turin really helped him because he works with trade agreements, and you might probably know that there are these ILO references in the trade agreement. So it's really helped him to kind of have a deeper conversation about what those references mean. And then lastly, I would also like to mention that we are also planning new collaboration in Africa together with the ILO and the EU. And we really hope to share some news about that collaboration soon. So I would say that in summary, the course gave us some really fond and warm memories. Coming to Turin and meeting all the NCPs and having these kind of very unlimited discussions about everything related to RBC, but specifically related to the ILO. That's one thing, and then it's given us a new tool to look at our work and how we could do even more within the framework where we are and with the resources that we have. So for us, it was very, very beneficial, and I hope, even though this is now only online, I hope that it will give tools for you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for these comments already, and which indeed already makes us also happy, that indeed it's still the message echoes still in Finland. Maybe let's go to Kandia. Kandia, you're not so far away from it. Yeah, wow, still 1,000 kilometers, I think, 800 kilometers.
Yes. Hello, Carol. Hello, everyone. Yes, I would like to follow a little bit what Linda, the plan of Linda. And so let's introduce myself first. I'm Candia Savastano. I'm a member of the OECD Italian NCP Secretariat. I work at the Ministry of Economic Development, where the Italian NCP has been established. I had this great chance last, let's see, I say last year because it seems that this year didn't pass.
Same here, exactly, same here.
Yeah, but well, anyway, it was almost 2 years ago, and we had this fantastic opportunity to meet all in Turin. It was a fantastic opportunity because, first of all, we were all from the European NCPs. So let's say that we could approach ILO questions from, let's say, a regional point of view. I say this because NCPs exist all over the world. And we try altogether to have, let's say, a coherence in our activities, in the management of the specific instances, which is the core of our business, let's say, because our, let's say, our main goal is to disseminate and raise awareness around the OECD guidelines, and to treat specific instances that may raise around a violation of some aspect of the guidelines by multinational enterprise. So, sorry, I have a couple of phones, and sometimes it's I forget to switch on off,
No problem.
one. So let's say that for us, it was interesting to approach the ILO activities from our European point of view, and to do some kind of peer learning, because it was all from, let's say, a similar management also of the NCP. This was, for me, let's say, an added value also of this, the opportunity that we had in Turin. Let's say that from all this week that we spent together analyzing the tools that the ILO developed to face some quite same issues, because we are really close, let's say, in trying to solve RBC or issues from the MNEs or the enterprises at the enterprises level. We understood that we are complementary, and this is another value added, because from this this aspect of complementarity, we could develop some kind of initiative that we had the chance to start. I think all of us from our single NCP. For what is about the Italian NCP, for example, let's try to answer to the hanging fruits that we could gather. First of all, it was the alignment of tools. because, for example, on our website, we could develop a focus web page dedicated to the ILO and to the instruments that ILO is offering to the enterprises and to everybody, because everybody could use the courses, the training around the declaration, the Yemeni declaration, and to try to develop a collaboration, raising awareness around all these specific instruments that we have, like the help desk, for example. The help desk is something that is related to the Yemeni declaration, and it's proper to the ILO. And I think that this is a precious instrument for everybody. And this is, for example, something that we promote from our NCP website. So alignment of the tools and collaboration between institutions. For longer term project and initiative, for example, we are now in contact with the ILO Office of Rome and developing a research project together on RBC and enterprises. So this is another kind of initiative that we're trying to develop together. And for the as I said before, the added value for a public, for the government, and for the, let's say, advanced coherence and synergies in terms of OECD and ILO frameworks. I think that every little project that each of us develop is an added value for the whole system, because more we try to promote all the tools that we have, the more the activity on the ground can benefit. The most important is that we try to bring everything together and to bring tools and instruments to companies that sometimes feel a little bit lonely in some places of the world where, for example, we don't have unions, or maybe some legislations are not mature enough. So the more we can do to help companies to not to feel alone there, the more also those countries and the local companies can benefit from other examples. And all together we can try to bring a more mature approach to business. And let's say that this for me the most interesting takeaway from this wonderful experience we had in Turin.
Thank you, Candia. These were already very good suggestions. I think you also have the Yemeni Declaration in Italian, translated it to Italian, I believe. And indeed, for business, of course, it's easy if you can find guidance that is provided, in this case, through the ILS help desk, and that other companies are also have struggled maybe with certain specific questions. Thank you, Candia. And we should not say anymore that it was a wonderful week in 2019. Otherwise, the participants that are attending the online event will feel bad, huh? Let's go to Cyril. Cyril.
Yes, thanks, Carl, and also thank you very much for inviting me to talk at this training. It's a real pleasure to share back some ideas and takeaways to put in practice. I will not repeat what Linda and Candia have said about the great training we had in Torino. That was already in September 2019, yes. It used to be another time before COVID where we could all gather and build a friendship more directly. But about my occupation, so I'm employed by the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Belgium, and I'm coordinating the Secretariat of the Belgium National Contact Point for the last 5 years. Also with Marianne Gracia, she's also attending the training. And I'm a member of the Bureau of the Working Party on Responsible Business Conduct at the OECD and a delegate to the Investment Committee. Very shortly about the Belgium NCP, which is of interest, that we have a tripartite structure representing the social dialogue with members from trade union and business federation. I'm also glad to see that some of our members are part of this training. We have federal ministries and also the 3 Belgium region, which make a total of 15 members. Carl, back to your question, what we achieved since our training in September 2019. So as said by Candia and Linda, as NCP Secretariat, we are now better aware of the different conventions and tools from the ILO, and more specifically from the M&E Declaration. And we are definitely able to mention them both to companies in search for information with the help desk, but also for complainants as mediation tool about the company union dialogue, which Gita gave very interesting new facts and trends that I was not aware. So it's a very important point. On more longer term projects and initiatives back from this training, we initiated talks with our NCP members in Belgium about the many potential links between the OECD guidelines and the M&E Declaration and the focal point. As I just said, since we are a tripartite NCP in Belgium, including the social partners, we thought a role could be played by the NCP to promote this very concrete tool of the declaration. It has led us already to a change of representation within the NCP of the member from the Ministry of Labour. This change of those members make now a better link with the issues and topics directly related to M&E Declaration and also with the Chapter 5 of the OECD guidelines. So it's a real added value that we have those new members within the NCP. And globally, it's a conversation that we got between members of the NCP about the focal point, with input from experts from the ILO representation office in Brussels. We invited them also at some of our meetings. We build stronger links with them. So now, in case we need support, we can also have those direct contacts. And today, this dialogue is still ongoing and is also taking place at the National Labour Council between the social partner. It's a long journey. We hope to move on in the coming year, as it's a goal, also part of the minister roadmap, among many other projects that he wants to bring to life in his mandate during the next 3 years. And this goal is also part of the results of the National Baseline Assessment, which followed the first National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights in Belgium. And this might give ideas to feed a second plan in the coming years. So these are some of the projects and talks that we are having at the National Contact Point. And also there are other links, as said by Linda, about free trade agreements and also other projects with the OECD. But I think these are parallel and synergies that we might talk after.
Okay, great. Thank you, Cyril, Linda, and Candia. Maybe a follow-up question, and I know Candia already mentioned it, but from your point of view, and let's go then to Linda, what is the added value in viewing at these different tools as in a complementary way, and seeing really the strengths in terms of synergies? Linda?
That's a good question. When I was listening to Geetha, I just it came to me that there is still work to be done to explain the roles of the different systems to stakeholders. Especially here in Finland, we are quite advanced when it comes to due diligence. Having said that, we know that there are still a lot of companies who are, even though they are committed to human rights, they are still very early on in their work to properly integrate due diligence processes into their work. And so it's when I think about last year, for example, I gave a lot of speeches online, dozens of speeches online or presentations, and it's very, sometimes it's very hard to say beforehand how much people know about due diligence and how much they know about the organizations behind the different RBC standards. So it's kind of, it would be much easier in a live situation to ask people kind of like, would you like me to say a few words about the OECD, the ILO and the UN, than it is, or at least that's how it seems to me. But it's listening to you and thinking about this whole picture again, this is something that I think that we could, or or I could tackle more when I talk to people, like just even though it's online, to ask that is it clear to everyone what the role of these 3 different organizations is and what happens in them, because sometimes we take it for granted that everyone knows it, when it's probably a fact that everyone certainly doesn't know what the ILO is, or what the OECD is, or what the UN is. So that's something that comes to my mind when thinking about this again. I don't know if I answered your question, but this is like on top of my mind at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So you also would like to add to this question, what do you see for the added value to your audience? And this can be other government institutions and the public at large, but also business.
Yes, because we see many potential synergies, not only between the OECD guidelines and the ILO framework, but also with the UNGP and the SDGs. Because these 3 tools are really the concept at the core of the responsible business conduct and due diligence concept. And it has been highlighted previously by Marjolaine. So we do see in Belgium a strong added value within economic mission abroad, which are led by the state to pass this message of coherence within these 3 tools on RBC. And we try to promote them regularly and to raise awareness with our colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because they do organize at each economic mission abroad a roundtable on specific issue linked with the country of visit. And the ILO has been involved in preparation of these roundtables, such as on the topic of child labor, for example, was in the cocoa industry in Ivory Coast. There was about the women empowerment in Morocco, also on RBC and corruption in Mexico. So there are kind of good practices that we try to make regular with our colleagues from Foreign Affairs. But also it highlighted me some other coherence and synergies that we should build on in the coming year. You should be aware that we are starting, there is this upcoming exercise of stock taking of the OECD guideline, which is initiated by the OECD. It's in order to evaluate the relevance of the guidelines since their last update in 2011. And I think mentioning explicitly links with the ILO M&E declaration would be very important, since it has been updated 4 years ago now, and the role of focal points, which did not exist at the time of 2011. So these focal points could be really a potential help for the work of the NCP in their mandate to seek information and collaboration in other countries where there is no NCP. And as we only have 49 countries with NCPs, when we manage complaints, it could be an important link to promote the agenda of decent work on RBC, mutually in supply chain with the many countries where we lack sometimes leverage or links on these issues. And maybe I was thinking on another point about free trade agreements, because Linda touched about it earlier. It's something also that in Belgium we support the implementation of what we call the TSD chapters, the Trade and Sustainable Development chapters. They have now important provision also on labor rights and environment. And the EU Commission made the ratification of all fundamental ILO convention a clear priority. And it is pushed by our delegates also when we are in regular contact with our Belgian delegates, and it's done during negotiation, but also prior to the entry into force of these agreements. So we think it also helps companies, these agreements, to give a clear framework on how to implement their future due diligence practices, also with their partners and providers from these countries under the scope of these free trade agreements. So this is a very important point about the trade agreement, and we should build more bridges also with these colleagues working and dealing with this negotiation, I think.
Excellent. Thanks, Cyril. Candia, you would like to add something? Listening now to Cyril and Linda.
Let's say that I join my colleagues in all their assumption as I think that the most important is to join efforts. And what was the, let's say, the most important value added was to understand the specificity of all the different tools, try to emphasize it, not to think of duplications, but to think of complementarity. And for example, when I came back from the training, we had a meeting. Our NCP as an advisory body, which is called NCP Committee, and which is composed of stakeholders from different institutions, from different ministries, from the social society, unions, and we had like a presentation of the training, of the output of the training. They were all fascinated, and most of all, of course, the unions were very happy of this opportunity that Daniele Branchini, which is my colleague from the NCP, and I had, because of course it helped also us to get more involved in the tools that are provided by the ILO, that they know very well because they are much more involved in the labor issues and mechanisms, and that we were presenting as an opportunity to develop also the NCP, let's say that to help the NCP to reach the goal. So yes, let's say the most important for me, like the biggest value added is the coherence that all our activity have in terms of reaching in practice the RBC, giving the opportunity to companies to learn how to act and what are the tools that they can use in case of problem, and also to help on the other side institution to work more to bring more efforts to approach three different tools that sometimes can be confused or considered as duplication in a more clear way.
Great, yeah. So it opens doors, the coherence, and it creates bridges and strengthens maybe already existing partnerships. Good. Maybe I would like to see if somebody from the participants that are in the room, because we only see names here, we don't see a lot of faces, but somebody who would like to react, and for this also, if Mariolena or Gita would like to add or to comment upon this, that is also welcome. But anybody would like to comment on this, on what was said already by Linda, Cyril, or Candia, or maybe a follow-up question? I keep a few seconds that I don't talk so that everybody can think.
And there's a hand raised by Jacqueline.
That's very nice. Jacqueline.
Yes, hello everybody. I would like to thank the ILO generally and also Gita and Marjolaine for this very good background for this webinar today we have. And also I am very, very glad for my colleagues, Linda, Cyril, and Candia, that they were able to participate in the trainings 3 years ago. Because I can imagine now how it is important to bring all the standards what we have, the CSR and RBC practices all together. And we are dealing this in our daily, let's say, daily work of the Polish NCP to introduce the standards is really not easy. And as Linda just said, that when we are meeting with the companies, it is for the starting point, nobody knows really what the OECD is, what the UN is, and what the ILO is. It is very difficult for us to explain them that each of these organizations has some kind of standards relating to the corporate social responsibility and the responsible business conduct, and that they are some kind of obligations that the company should follow. I should add also to this the European Union expectations also formulated towards the companies. Especially on the background of the disclosure on the non-financial information. So this is really, I'm very thankful to have this opportunity to listen to this exchange of the experience of my colleagues, and I hope that when we will be continuing our work as our NCP, also we will be much more able to introduce some kind of ILO standards. Especially I am thankful to Gita that she presented today this, helpful desk for the business, because it is really very interesting. I will follow this and try to maybe to introduce to some Polish companies to this opportunity to take part in this network. So thank you very much. It was really excellent webinar for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacqueline. We're not yet there. We're not yet finished. It's still another important event later this week, but maybe anybody else who would like to comment before I continue?
Yeah, I actually, just want to respond also to Jacqueline. It's a pleasure to have you on the course. And, we were talking about the M&E declaration also being available in other languages. So actually, we also received from the Polish government that we have the M&E declaration in Polish. So I don't know whether this came from you or via the ministry or, but I have it actually in a printed copy. It was sent to me in Geneva. And it was, sometimes how things happen in our member states. And of course, we are not even aware of them. But so it exists also in Polish. So if you would be interested in putting it on the website, it was done by the ministry. I don't know whether you have it as well or not.
No, if I may answer, I will just tell you, it was done by my colleagues from the Ministry of Labor, and this is the Ministry of Labor and Family and the Social Policy, because there is the ILO, generally the cooperation with ILO is the competence of this ministry, and they were also very active and cooperate with us when they were thinking about establishing the national focal points. They are asked us, my ministry, which is the Ministry of Development Funds and Regional Policy, where the Polish NCP is located. And we, on the very beginning, we just start to rethink if it is possible to combine to do this together, the national focal point for the ILO M&E and the national contact point. And finally, we decided that it will be separated. but they are still under some consideration in their ministry. But thank you very much for mentioning this Polish version, and maybe we will also try to rethink about the maybe some also information about the other standards of the responsible business conduct, including the ILO, on our NCP website, and then we can also put this Polish version of the MNE declaration. Thank you so much for this suggestion.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And thank you, Gita. Good. I see we already start thinking about what we can do now, huh? And that was also the idea, and that's why we invited Cyril and Linda and Candia to give us some ideas on what can be done. Some are might be very simple to do, the low-hanging fruits. Other are subject of more discussion and dialogue at the national level, to find this best configuration on how to take this forward. We don't need an answer now. Also, we don't need an answer by the end of the week, but I would like to invite everybody to start thinking more practical, in a more from a more practical perspective. And this is the assignment for the next 2 days. You don't have to write anything down for now, but we would like to start for you to start thinking. And also this relates to if you are from if you are related to the NCP from a country that also just presented. If you are Finnish, Belgian, or Italian, there are still maybe other activities or initiatives that you could do. But the question is very simple. That will be also the question that will be discussed in the final webinar on Friday afternoon, how to take forward synergies, coherence, and collaboration at the national level in the work of the NCP for RBC, and for the benefit of its clients and its partners. How to take forward, what are initiatives and activities that we can do to take this agenda of coherence and synergies forward. I don't need to have an answer at this moment. The idea is on Friday that we really will have an open floor in that regard, that we can listen to each other. What are the ideas that are coming up from listening to each other? And we will develop a short methodology that we will do on Friday. The idea is also not that we will take ministerial decrees, but the idea is just that we let the creativity flow a bit and start thinking about activities that can be done. And secondly, also, what is then the kind of support that is needed from ILO or from OECD? So that is on the agenda for Friday. Indeed, we decided to do it on Friday at the end of the week. So you have a bit more time this week to think about that question. I will send an email tomorrow morning also with this question in it, because we still have another session optional, in case you would like to join. We have tomorrow afternoon the session on forced labor, similar as to what we had last week on child labor and indigenous peoples, with Deepa Rishikesh. I hope I pronounced that one correctly. I have to practice it tomorrow. That will be the session tomorrow on forced labor. She will give an introduction on what are the main tools in terms of forced labor. She also will talk about the different definitions, slavery, forced labor, and so forth, and about upcoming regulations in Europe in terms of forced labor. And then on Friday, we have the final webinar from 2 to 4, where we will also send you an email about this final webinar. So thank you, thank you, Gita and Maria-Elena, for being with us, and also Cyril, Candia, and Linda. I think this was a very interesting webinar, and I hope it gives you some ideas to start thinking, like what more can be done at the country level. So we see each other then for the final webinar on Friday, and if not, for tomorrow's Meet the Expert session on forced labor. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the invitation. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank